learn from, and then also engage in dialogue and fuse to, and then also engage with other regional educational institutions and educational schools for dissemination of knowledge and ideas, and then sort of always having this sense of synergy effects, trying to bring people together, like today in an open dialogue. Questions, or do we take questions later or questions at lunch?
If it's someone want to say something right now, or otherwise we can continue the discussion.
Just a short question.
Yes.
Is this part of some kind of project with the Pufendorf? Is it supported?
I don't think we've come that far, but since I'm here, I can say that we from the Photographic Institute find this a really interesting.
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
you're
project.
waiting. You're
We're
waiting.
waiting for
Yes.
application. Yeah,
And that's what we've been discussing is, and sort of, that will probably be the next step after sort of today's discussions are, because we do have representation in sort of the group so far from the social sciences and natural sciences, and now we have arts and humanities and philosophy and law, so this is the reason for bringing this group together as a preparation. As I understand, the purpose of the Photographic Institute is interdisciplinarity.
yeah, to facilitate projects, especially projects that are, we work as an incubator to facilitate projects that are starting and to have, and we already have the more than 3 faculties, which is the basic demands for starting with the Institute. So, yeah.
So that's the next step. Russell.
I will.
All right, okay, God.
You sound like God.
It's quite loud, isn't it? Well, thank you very much to Goran and Chris for inviting me here. This is the first time I've been to Sweden in the summer. I've been to Gothenburg and Stockholm and before several times, but never in the summer months, so it's wonderful to see what a beautiful place this is. What I'm going to try and do is be very kind of schematic about my experiences with photography and institutions in a way that I hope will be of some benefit to your exciting and ambitious project. When I was told about it, I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to get it right. Because from experience, there are often imbalances, different agendas, short-term funding, so sustainability is an issue, people leave, institutional vision, strategy changes, and that's tough realities to deal with when you're proposing the salvaging of photographic culture in Sweden through the kind of lens of a festival, academic research, and a kind of archipelago of photographic archives and collections in dialogue with contemporary practice and ideas. I really hope it works. It would be fantastic if someone could get it right. And I'm speaking purely in terms of my own experience here, because there have been successes and there have been sort of challenges. So I think if you can work out what it is you want to do very clearly from the beginning, how phased funding is going to work, what the deliverables are going to be, what the social cultural benefit is regionally and nationally, and you have the blessing of directors of institutions and total buy-in from all the staff, then it can work. I think it can work, and that's why I think it's really exciting. I'll do my best to offer you a UK context, the Welsh context, for some points of reference that might be useful. Maybe I should say a little bit about myself. I'm just going to work out, because I'm a Mac person. Yeah, there we go. Sorry if I infringed any copyright in, in taking this yesterday. But so my background is I'm a mongrel, really. I come through museums and academia, and have always maintained a dialogue between the vocational work of museums as kind of safeguarding visual heritage and preserving and growing national collections with academic debate. The place where I am at the moment is a university. It's just merged with a bigger university and now has a new name of University of South Wales. It was University of Wales. We were based in Newport, and we were a university of 10,000 souls. And our new faculty within the new university structure is 11,000 in a university of 35,000 people. So we've gone from something quite petite and manageable to this monster with a different kind of bureaucratic framework, a different agenda. So as a research centre, we're having to navigate these tectonic shifts within this new institution. But as I said, small nation, big history, and in terms of its photographic heritage, it is vast, it is dispersed, the majority of it is uncatalogued, rarely seen, rarely written about, only from within a particular cultural framework. I want to say a little bit more. Photography at the Borders, that was our subtitle, because we thoroughly believe in dialogue between disciplines in photography, between theory, practice, between contemporary and the historical. So we wanted to establish a set of interdisciplinary relations, but also acknowledge the importance of discipline. And this is something I cannot stress enough, really, is that you always need people who are working within the fields in which those photographs have been used and collected, so you can really understand what it is you do, how to look at them, how other individuals working within different disciplines used photographs as evidence, as a way of story, etc. So our research centre is kind of multicultural in a number of ways. I thought this was a nice provocation from the Spanish artist Foto, who edited an anthology called Photography, Crisis of History. And I think it's a very true statement, where he actually wonders if there has yet been a real history of photography, or only its archaeology. So we're just scratching at the surface as far as our understanding of photographic culture is concerned in relation to those institutions that are trying to collect it. Because the visibility of photography in contemporary culture is often under the rubric of art. And that's been the dominant discourse in defining the value of photography. And only really since the 1980s has it been challenged. So history, archaeology is an interesting question there for your project, I think. And as the AGN03 exhibition demonstrated, which I enjoyed very much, that photography here in Sweden is extremely diverse and has a history of that sort of multiple uses to be written and exhibited. I started off at the Victoria and Albert Museum in the Department of Photographs. I was a postgraduate researcher at London University, and then I went on to work with the Pitt Rivers Museum in the 90s at the University of Oxford. Then I became head of photography at the National Museum of Photography, as it was known then, film and television, possibly the longest museum name in history. they've made it sexier now by calling it the National Media Museum, which I absolutely hated and left as soon as they changed the name. Because they didn't need a head of photography, head of film, head of television, etc. So this was their kind of visual turn and a way of dealing with their collections in a way that I thought was rather irresponsible and superficial, and has subsequently come back to haunt them. So a lot of those collections now, the then National Museum of Photography are going to the Victoria and Albert Museum now, approximately 3.5 million items. So that's something to consider, and that's been driven really by an international interest in photography around the axis of art, I would argue. So within that collection was the Kodak Museum collection, the Royal Photographic Society collection, newspaper archives, the Science Museum photographic collection, advertising collections, photography, a very rich social history, popular use, popular cultures, use of photography, photojournalism. It was mad, but it was beautifully mad because it actually, in my opinion, represented the use of photography in its myriad forms. Trying to make sense of that as a curator through exhibition, through writing was a bit of a challenge, but I personally found it very rewarding because of its diversity. I then went to Oxford, where I had a sabbatical for a year. I was a fellow at Lineker and the Pitt Rivers Museum. Shall we welcome them? And then I ended up in 2006 at what was the University of Wales. So when I've been a museum professional, I've always desired to work with academics as a way of generating new ways of thinking about collections. And now I'm outside of the museum and in the academy. I'm trying to work with museums and archives in order to enhance understanding and consciousness of photographic culture in Wales in particular. But I'm still working within the Science Museum and the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, so I'm not egg-bound just by Wales, but a lot of my work is focused on national collections. So I've broken this kind of overview down into 5 sections. Obviously, some context of Wales, I'm sure you know where it all is, but just to remind you, the institution I'm based, the kind of research that we do as a group. I was going to say something about curatorial strategies, but I'll probably just keep that verbal. That's really linked to my own work. And then networks was just really some suggestions that you might want to run with, that we could talk about at the end of the day. But it was nice to see that a number of the points I was going to make anyway are up in Chris's presentation anyway, so that's reassuring. Right, so Wales, just to give you a sense of its scale, you are 21.2 times bigger than Wales. I think the population is nearly 10 million. Wales has a population of 3.1 million, 20% is Welsh speaking, which is on the increase. The Welsh language it's being pushed quite heavily, so that drives a sense of national identity. And obviously, the role of the visual within that is very important, and how salvage exercises are being conducted. So that the National Library of Wales, which is predominantly Welsh speaking, they call their collection the National Welsh Collection of Documentary Photographs, and I've always been I'm nervous about any form of nationalism, but I've always been curious about what a Welsh photograph looks like. You know, what does Welsh maths look like? So, but it's an important part of the sense of place. 82% of the land use is given over to agriculture. There are 10 million sheep, I am told. I haven't counted them currently in Wales. 1 in 20 people in the UK live in Wales. 1 in 4 people live in poverty. That's 60% below the average weight, so the kind of post-industrial legacy within South Wales, especially around steel and coal, has left the valleys, in particularly socially, economically bereft. 10 million tourist visits from within the UK, so Wales is a huge destination for tourism. It's had its own National Assembly since the referendum in 97, founded in 98, and it's seeking further devolution, self-governing along the lines of Scotland, but it's not as far down the line. Wales is, amongst my peers, is considered a colonised country. We talk about colonialism. It's not the empire, it's about the dominant neighbour next door. And that's been particular focus of work in visual arts practice, in photography, and in sort of cultural studies. So this kind of reclaiming a sense of nation has figured extensively in a lot of institutions. Its photographic heritage is significant. It's a kind of crucible of photography, where the kind of literary and philosophical societies, particularly around Swansea, often linked to the rich, to the Llewellyn family in particular, who were associated with Talbot, the inventor of photography on paper. So in the first 5 years of photography, Wales figures prominently. Its landscapes, its buildings, its kind of mercantile work is documented in early iconography. So the Llewellyn family in particular experimented with early photographic processes through their links with Talbot. They were typical sort of amateur scientists, botanists. Llewellyn built an observatory. He also built a glass house for orchids, and uses photography to explore those range of disciplines, but also to picture home life, domestic life of the wealthy. So I always argue that within the first 5 years of photography, you get a real sense of all the future uses that the medium gets put to work on, and particularly Talbot's pencil of nature. I think it's all there, both manifest and latent forms. So it makes it a very interesting kind of holdings of photography to work with. But these are dispersed in county records offices, in national museums, and in archives. But the kind of dominant, if you like, stereotype, or the visual images of Wales tends to focus on its labour and industrial history. Obviously, the labour movement, socialism, was extremely important in the coal and steel industries. So there's a lot of photography by leftist-leaning photographers: Robert Frank, Eugene Smith, Bruce Davidson, Bill Brandt, Edith Tudor Hart, the Communist Party. So a lot of imagery around work and social life, but again, not catalogued to the extent that it could be, and again, does not figure in the exhibition culture of the museums and libraries to the extent that it might do. This is the National Library of Wales. This is the sister institution, National Museum of Wales. Wales' sense of self or nationhood comes late in terms of national institution. So these are around 1914, so Edwardian, whereas a lot of other UK national institutions are 17th century in formation. The Tredescence, the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, for example. So the sense of self and a nation, through salvaging its past, does come late. It does steal one of your folk models. It's Skanser, the the living folk museum that you have. St. Fagans is, I think, follows, but borrows from that model. So the idea of creating a sense of the nationhood itself comes late through its museums, even though it's got sort of deep historical collections. And I suppose another dominant image of Wales, which connects with that statistic, about 10 million visitors, tourist visitors, is this idea of an unspoiled wilderness, which is really mid and North Wales. The South Wales is very different. So this is the lack of cut yourself off from the trappings of modern day life and lose yourself in this picturesque, unspoiled landscape. So you've got romanticism on the one hand, and then you've got this industrial social history on the other hand, as dominant images of the past. Something that's looming is the Aberfan, the centenary, or the 50 years, 50th anniversary of the Aberfan disaster, which happened in October 1966. And we're seeing a lot of exhibitions and symposiums which are talking, or trying to talk about this with survivors and people who assisted pulling some of the few children and adults that did not die when that coal tip slag called mining waste slid down. It was built on a spring. The tribunal is fascinating because the responsibility rests with the National Coal Board.